record and Nama Om Vishnu Padhaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swamti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pachaline Nivasisha Sunyavari Pashtatara Satarine Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sari Gaura Bhaktivinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So we read chapter 1, setting the scene. And chapter 1, setting the scene is anyone else can also share, as I recall. Very beautiful description of Krishna, Gopal, baby Krishna sleeping. And his mother Yasoda is a little bit hesitant to wake him up. And she's engaged in her duties. Swish, swish, swish. Actually, I'll share the screen. Actually, what can you see on the screen? Can you see Mother Yasoda?
Yes, Prabhu.
Oh, you can. All right, yeah, because I'm sharing my iPad. Yeah, so she's churning the yogurt, and she's thinking of her beloved son. And then beautiful description how gradually Krishna awakens. And he's looking at Mother Yasoda, the personification of paternal love. And he's in great loving appreciation. Yeah. And Mother Yasoda in turn is appreciating her loving, beautiful son. So that's where we left off. All right, so you're already seeing my screen, isn't it? So I've no need to share. All right, be a bit patient with us because as I said, we've got a few technical things went wrong. So anyway, let's begin reading. Hare Krishna. So if devotees would like to read, you're quite welcome. Perhaps Mother Gaia, you can read. If you can start us off, I can read as well. Perhaps we can read for others. Let's see.
I don't have a book, Prabhu.
Oh, no one has. No, you do have a book. Look, it's here. 1 second, I should show you. 1 second. There's the book, see?
Oh, yes.
All right. So this is how we're going to do it. So let's try and enter into a meditation here. Try and read a little bit slower than we usually do to try and emphasize the mood here so we can meditate on what's being read. Try and enter into as much as possible the mood of this pastime. Okay? So without further ado, let's begin. Hare Krishna. Okay, go ahead.
Should I read? Okay. Mother Yashoda attends to her duties. There was a moment of silence. In that moment, Krishna gauged his mother's reactions and watched as she withdrew from immersion in thoughts of him, and her consciousness entered once more into the external world. Seated in bed, tears flowing down his cheeks, Krishna sobbed silently. Spontaneously, he looked around, searching for his close friends, but they were absent. Everyone was preparing for Deepavali. Looking again to his mother, his heart swelled with love to see her ride the relentless surf of oceanic love for him. I must get up, stop her churning, and drink the milk of her breasts. I must. Thinking in this way, Krishna's hunger for milk rose to his tongue, impelling him to fulfill its need. Suddenly, his wandering eye caught the crystal container of sweets on the nightstand. The tempting Manohara Laddu seemed to say, "Oh, little boy, if you are hungry, eat me." And the Kanda next to the Laddu, "No, eat me first." But Krishna's hunger for his mother's milk was not just part of...
It's coming. There it is. That didn't take so long. Very good.
his childhood pastimes. His hunger arose from the special affection he cherished for his mother, affection that was the very bedrock of his childhood pastimes. And in the way that hunger becomes intolerable for one who has not eaten, Krishna's yearning for his mother's love milk became unbearable due to the unrequited love within him. In ecstasy, he again cried out, Mother, Mother! Since Yashoda could not yet give solace to her child, love, prema, took it upon itself to do so, saying, Fear not, O Lord. Surely your mother will fulfill your desire shortly and bring you great bliss. Considering what he had heard, Krishna replied, O essence of pure pleasure, O you who know everything, please hear this. Due to her great love for me, Mother is submerged in divine emotions. However, by my pastimes today, I shall bring her far greater pleasure than she has ever known, and I am eager to do so. That is why I am crying. I want her to achieve the pinnacle of motherly love. With what pastime will you two scale the mountain of mutual devotion? With something very special. May I know what that special pastime is? Krishna looked around again. He was still alone with Yashoda. It was my heartfelt desire that we be alone so that I can taste the bliss of being bound by mother's hands, and so that she can relish the nectars of doing so. Bound? Yes, I want to feel tied by the ropes of mother's love, helpless and captive. Only then will I know what devotees feel when they are bound to me by love. The ropes I use for tying cows' legs, the Niryoga Pasha, are my ropes of love. O Prema, you know this well. With those ropes do I tie the hearts of the Vrajavasis to the stake of spontaneous service, and with those ropes do I also capture conditioned souls and drag them to this divine abode. But Krishna paused for a moment, preparing to announce a momentous truth. But I do not know what it is like to be bound by the rope of my devotee's love. Prema wondered, how is that? Your heart is not only tied by devotees, but is their property. You yourself said, Sadavo Hridayam Mahyam. Krishna stopped crying momentarily and sniffled. That is true, but I want to feel their love not just with my heart, but with my entire being. Looking back at Queen Yashoda, Krishna added, and I especially want to feel her love. I want to feel it all around my transcendental form, like the air that now surrounds me. Prema asked, but why do you have to be alone to achieve that end? Because I am afraid that someone may interfere with my plans. Who will let me be bound? Do you think Balarama, Sridama, or even the maids would let mother do that? That is why I encouraged my brother to visit our uncle and my friends to busy themselves with Deepavali. Oh Lord, I'm certainly very eager to see this day's adventures unfold. Krishna concluded, O Prema, I shall depend upon you to manifest extraordinary powers so that mother and I can taste your very essence, unprecedented, ecstatic emotion. Please satisfy me in all respects. Lord, it shall be as you desire.
Okay, thank you, Mother Gaia. Perhaps I can take over now for a little bit. We've got Yasoda continued to churn mechanically, like one in a magical trance. But the continued swish, swish of the churn did not sit well with Krishna. Climbing down from the bed, still sleepy-eyed and wearing only a kopin, he tottered in the direction of his mother. Once, long ago, the demons and demigods churned the ocean of milk, and from that churning many wonderful beings appeared, like Mohini Moti, the Dhanvantari, and even Lakshmi Devi. But when Yasoda churned yogurt, the most wonderful being, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, appeared. And Krishna's rising was joyfully met by the waiting world, the earth, The earth turned butter soft beneath his feet. The morning breeze caressed his limbs, and the chirping birds praised his beauty. All of which, along with the festival of Gokula, excuse me, can't quite see that word. Excuse me, Krishna. All of which, along with the festival of Gokula, gladdened his heart. As he toddled towards Mother Yasoda, Krishna's ankle bells tinkled, and out of need for attention, he again began to softly weep. Finally, Yasoda came to full external consciousness. From the corner of her eyes, Yasoda watched Krishna approach. Eager to relish his moods and movements, she did not greet him, but waited until he stood beside her, stretching his body, rubbing his eyes, and murmuring, "Mother, mother." No response. Upset at being spurned, Krishna grabbed the folds of Yasoda's sari with his right hand, and leaning forward, he caught hold of the churning rod with his left. "Oh, my beloved son, you are awake. How wonderful." Queen Yasoda greeted her son with words of kindness, while still pulling on the churning rope. Swish, swish. But Krishna did not want any more swish, swish. Now placing his other hand on the churning rope, he gave up his tears. "No, stop, stop." And when Yasoda pulled on the rope again, he added, Mother, mother, do not churn." Yasoda stopped and gazed lovingly into her son's tear-streaked but determined face. Still holding on to the churn, he leant against her breast, making known his intentions. Yasoda's heart welled up in affection, and milk trickled from her breasts, moistening her upper garment. "How charming he is," she thought. To impress upon her the urgency of his want, Krishna tugged again at the churning rope. His effort was not lost on her. Putting the rope down, Yasoda placed her hands under his arms and raised Krishna to her lap. Gazing for a moment at the indescribable beauty of her son, she drank that beauty through her eyes and was about to nurse him when she stopped and pondered. Why does my son look so different, so beautiful, and in ways I've never before seen? Has he changed in some mysterious way? Or is it that I, who have never really looked at him so deeply, why? Unbeknown to Queen Yasoda, love had followed Krishna's orders to create an unprecedented pastime by giving her unique vision with which to explore Krishna's fathomless beauty. So intense and revelatory was Yasoda's experience that as she gazed at him, she wondered, is this really Krishna? Yes, it was him. The power of divine love is such that it reveals Krishna's sweetness, freshness, beauty, and charm in proportion to love's intensity. Thus, by her newly evolved affection, Yasoda was experiencing Krishna in never before seen ways. To Raja's queen, Krishna's transcendental form was a mysterious dark creeper of beauty, sprouting from a mound of musk and growing skywards, where it drank from fresh rain clouds to shower her with sapphire flowers, soft as the foam of milk and carrying the fragrance of musk. Blinking to clear her eyes, Yasoda then saw her son to be a puppet made of jewels. His limbs blue sapphires, his lips, hands, and feet red rubies, his nails pink coral, and his teeth spotless pearls. But when she looked again, it appeared that he was made of blue lotuses scattered with red ashok, pink java, and white maliki flowers. Was he made of gems or flowers? Gently stroking his hair, she saw the curly black locks framing his forehead as a swarm of bumblebees, which, when intoxicated from drinking the nectar of his face, disappeared into the dark night of his hair. Yes, he is made of flowers. Enchanted by these wonders, doubt arose in Yasoda's mind, and she turned Krishna's pinkish soles upwards, noting their special signs, like the gold bowl and chakra. What is this? When she examined his hands and noted other signs of divinity, about to address her son with reverence, she looked into his eyes. Two blue lotus buds growing from startlingly mysterious depths. Those eyes were made all the more unsettling by the tear-smeared ointment around them, in which countless universes seemed to rise and fall. Her heart trembled in reverential wonder. Who is he? And then it was over. Krishna raised the soft petals of his lotus hand and touched her cheeks, sobbing assertively, "Mother!" And Prema withdrew any feelings of reverence from Yasoda's heart, leaving it full of maternal love. Divine characteristics may ornament my son, but whatever the appearances, he is an ordinary boy born of my womb. She reprimanded herself. Why am I so selfish, enjoying my son instead of serving him? Kissing his sapphire blue cheeks and uttering short cries of loving concern, Yasoda said, "Poor thing, my little darling, you must be hungry after sleeping so long. I am very hungry. I am very angry." As the sound of Krishna's voice created in her ear an echo akin to Vedic mantras, Yasoda smoothed Krishna's hair with her hand. Why are you angry, my dear? Because you're churning butter instead of giving me your milk. Are you very angry with me? Had you not stopped churning, I would have broken the churn. Oh dear. But darling, the butter is also meant for you. That may be, but the butter is for later, and I am hungry now. Yasoda Devi marveled at the cleverness of this little boy. She thought, he is only 3, yet he can speak and behave like an adult. Her heart swelled with pride as wave after wave of divine ecstasy swept through her body. Teasing, she replied, "Then why are you talking? Why do you not drink?" Laying Krishna comfortably on her lap, Yasoda undid her blouse and began to nurse her little son. Krishna did not have to suck, for milk poured spontaneously from his mother's divine breast, like a monsoon downpour from a dark cloud. Yasoda watched Krishna hold her breast with his 2 lotus hands and listened to his repertoire of sounds of satisfaction. With his hair hanging like a curtain of dark jewels, Krishna was a chataka bird drinking from a rain cloud in the dead of night. Sometimes a little milk would spill from the edge of Krishna's mouth. Sometimes he would spit some out. At those times, Yasoda would smile and wipe away the drops from his face with the edge of her veil. When Krishna opened his eyes and saw his mother's benevolent countenance, he also smiled, and again the milk spilled. Seeing the mark of Srivatsa and the sign of Lakshmi on his chest, the queen thought they were milk and tried to wipe them away. But then she recognized them for what they were, and shaking her head, she whispered, "You are such a mysterious little boy." It is difficult to describe the transcendental exchange between Yasoda and Krishna. Although resembling a mother breastfeeding her child, it was much more than that. Krishna was not just drinking ambrosial milk, he was drinking the liquid form of maternal love. And Mother Yasoda was not just breastfeeding him, but pouring the very essence of her heart into him. In the mundane variant of such a relationship, the infant is the recipient and the mother the benefactor. But in this sacred exchange, the original maternal relationship, Krishna fully reciprocated with Yasoda, giving as much as he was taking, and perhaps even more. What was Krishna giving to Mother Yasoda, and how was he doing it? While touching Yasoda Devi's breast with the devotion that a pujari touches the deity, a current of love passed from son to mother, increasing her bliss immeasurably. And as though laying on her lap, Krishna also entered his mother's heart, wherein she not only felt the bliss he was enjoying, but also the love for her that he was radiating. As a result, they both became ensnared in a kind of spiritual rivalry in which each spontaneously outdid the other in mutual offerings of ever-ascending love. This contest of love filled the kitchen with auspiciousness, and with its rays it invoked the highest ecstasy in all creatures nearby. Finally, love reached the stage at which both Yasoda and Krishna's hearts melted, and in that condition they both thought that one could not be without the other for even a fraction of a moment. Yasoda Devi thought, I shall die if I am ever separated from him. Krishna looked at his mother. How could I ever be without her? Seeing that this kind of loving intoxication could obstruct the unfolding of Krishna's Damodara Leela, Prema decided to intervene. Queen Yasoda is truly the mother of the universe because she nurses the shelter of all universes, and yet for the sake of all beings, I must interrupt their service, lest my Lord's pastimes be hindered. Thus, love's influence on both mother and son gradually subsided, and consequently the affection, sneha, that was welding them together slackened. Taking their cue from this latest development, the pastime potency turned another leaf in the book of Damodara's transcendental pursuits. Hare Krishna. Let's see, anyone else would like to read? Please make yourself, if you like to read, please do. If not, Mother Guy is an enthusiastic reader. You can read the next section. Hare Krishna.
Anybody? No?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, I can read
Don't
them.
want to force devotees to read. Mother Guy, you can read. Go ahead.
To behold the idyllic scene of mother and son, a pair of parrots landed on the terrace balustrade, joining the gathering of the few other birds that had arrived earlier. These two were known as Shuka and Shari, and they were favorites of Krishna, who would often feed them grapes and pomegranates. Sitting side by side, the two birds craned their necks in an attempt to better see Krishna over Mother Yashoda's shoulders. Not satisfied, they flew to a perch inside the balcony that Nanda Maharaj had installed for his son's favorite birds. From their new vantage point, the birds watched Mother Yashoda beaming at her son's smiling face. Perhaps he was smiling because the milk was flowing spontaneously into his mouth, or perhaps because his hunger was being assuaged. Perhaps it is both, said Shuka to his spouse. Amplified by the vision of her son's face, enchantment echoed in the queen's mind. Just see how intelligent this boy is. He stopped me from churning, sat himself on my lap, and with the cleverest words prevailed on me to feed him. Just see. As if in agreement, the parrots shook their heads side to side, equally captivated by the cloud blue boy. Then unexpected sounds startled them, and in fear they flapped their wings and screeched. A choir of sounds burst through Yashoda's blissful absorption. Oh, I can't see the top.
Yeah,
Emergency,
you're
emergency.
welcome. Go ahead. It says, emergency, I'll just read it first.
Yep.
Emergency, emergency, Krishna's milk is boiling over.
The
Significant.
milk? Okay. The milk's alarming debut into her thoughts was swiftly followed by its song. The boiling milk crooned glug glug and rolled to the rim of the pot. Rumble, rumble, rumble. It flowed down the sides and spattered onto the stove.
Nice, you can
In this,
picture that. So the milk
yep,
has committed suicide. The milk has jumped out the pot. Okay, carry on.
in this way, the milk taunted Yashoda with its medley of sounds. "Oh, queen, your inept maid put too much wood on the fire." "That silly girl," murmured Yashoda. "Never again." Seeing that the stove had become too hot and that the milk pan was clearly boiling over, Yashoda Devi acted quickly. Lifting Krishna from her lap, Yashoda placed him on the floor and rose to her feet. "My dear, please watch the churning pot while I look after your milk. I will only be a moment." With that, she raced off to the kitchen. Krishna reeled in shock at this sudden turn of events. He watched his departing mother's back and the trail of breast milk she left on the floor. Then, feeling hungry and neglected, he bit his lower lip and stamped his feet in anger. After fasting all night, here he was, teased with a few drops of milk and then abruptly deprived of more. His stomach was pained with hunger. How frustrating! And it was a double calamity. He was deprived not only of nourishment, but of motherly love. Anger rose within him and he began to growl like a lion cub. The sound was not accidental. The presiding deity of parental love is Nrsimhadev, and that half-lion lord was voicing his displeasure in no uncertain terms. Again Krishna stamped his feet, and hot tears of anger rolled down his cheeks and fell to the ground. The parrots were aghast. How could this be? Shuka turned to Shari. Why did Mother Yashoda not continue feeding her son and just carry him into the kitchen? Oh, Shari replied, "Is it not obvious? She was afraid that she would drop him in the process." The other birds present became equally excited, some considering Mother Yashoda's conduct controversial, others considering it natural. In defense of the queen, a she-cuckoo added, "Not only that, uh, to
To,
keep
to
the milk,
keep milk, yeah.
yeah, to keep the milk from burning, Yashoda had to move quickly, and she would not be able to do so if she was encumbered by her son." But some birds were not satisfied with this answer, and they continued to clamor amongst themselves,
Right.
some questioning, some defending the queen's actions. Another cuckoo crooned. Although Krishna was only half finished with drinking when Yashoda put him down, considering the urgency of the situation and the risk of dropping him, what else could she do? But Shuka screeched, "How can you speak like that? Is it reasonable to abandon one's hungry, emaciated son for a pot of milk, especially when we are surrounded with Raja's milk-soaked pastures?" A sarcastic wagtail added, "And is it reasonable that such an act be perpetrated by one who is known as the presiding deity of affectionate mothers?" But a group of experienced female birds answered, "Please consider, for the least of Rajavasis, who what to speak of Nanda and Yashoda, their homes, bodies, relatives, and lives are fully dedicated to Krishna. They consider everything to be his. Similarly, for Yashoda Devi, the milk is meant for Krishna, and therefore she considers it even more important than him." The male birds protested in unison. "How can that be? Impossible. A pail of milk is more important than Krishna?" But the females calmly continued. "Therefore Yashoda attends to her household duties even at the cost of Krishna's distress." The male birds huddled together to consult. Good-natured Shari added, "Our queen thinks, my boy knows nothing but his body and his home. Therefore, I must do my household duties with the same care as I do feeding him. The other females continued, do we not sometimes scold our own offspring out of love? Of course we do. Why? It is in their best interest. Similarly, Mother Yashoda has decided that Krishna's interest will be best served by saving the milk even at the cost of his being hungry. A female dove swaggered towards the other birds, saying, in that way, Yashoda Devi's conduct is consistent with her irreproachable love for Krishna. Her mate agreed. She is faultless. Indeed, her conduct is a virtue. How could it be otherwise? Shari added, it is said that the mysteries of love are such that when ladies prepare food, they are sometimes more concerned about their preparation than about the persons who will eat. Concluding on what was being discussed, a wise horned owl spoke from a nearby branch. In other words, sometimes when confronted with two equally important things, one must attend to one at the cost of the other. For a great devotee like Queen Yashoda, the proper intuition on how to make such decisions is given to her by the Lord in the heart. How then can she be at fault, however extraordinary her actions may appear to us? Hearing this summary, all the birds concurred on the wise owl's wisdom, and, calming their voices and smoothing their feathers, they turned their attention to baby Krishna as a little songbird chirped. My suspicion is that this is not the only extraordinary conduct that Yashoda Devi will display today. What do you mean? Asked the others. Call it a feeling that I have, maybe something I read in the stars before dawn.
Hare Krishna, so you have to excuse me, I made a bit of a miscalculation. The chapter is shorter than I thought. So I haven't taken photos of the next chapter. So you have to bear with me while I continue reading. Hope that's okay. It's nice, isn't it? Very sweet to hear. Beautiful. Right. So we're going to chapter 3 now, which is Krishna breaks the churning pot. If anyone does have a copy with them, you're quite welcome to read if you do happen to have. So let me just get a picture up here. 1 second. Okay, you can meditate on this picture while we're reading. You can see this is a nice picture. Mother Yasoda is meditating upon Krishna, her beloved Krishna, while she's churning. Swish, swish. Okay, now comes a dramatic chapter. Krishna's breaking a churning pot. Okay. In the way that a child's appetite for sweets increases with every bite, and in the way that a drunkard desires more wine with every sip, so Krishna's absorption in his pastime intensified with each unfolding scene. For a moment, Krishna's aggrieved reaction to being denied his mother's breast milk was subdued by wonder at her service attitude. He watched, transfixed, as Yasoda Devi ran into the kitchen and so revealed the ultimate picture of maternal love. It was an image that Krishna secreted in the core of his heart, and one that disclosed the truth known to exceptionally qualified devotees. To serve Krishna, devotees would agree to be separated from him. Only because it pleased him would Mother Yasoda let Krishna herd calves in the forests. Only because he wanted to deliver Vasudeva and Devaki would the Vrajvasis allow him to go to Mathura. Only because they thought he wanted aristocratic girls would the gopis forgive his infidelity. While separation between lovers is generally painful, it was different with Krishna and the Vrajvasis. When Krishna was distant from them, the Vrajvasis externally behaved as if they had been poisoned. Excuse me, let's read that again. When Krishna was distant from them, the Vrajvasis externally behaved as if they had been poisoned. However, the internal reality, what the Vrajvasis felt, was entirely different. While separation appeared devastating, It actually caused feelings of unprecedented bliss. And so it was for Krishna. When he was in a forest, Krishna's heart yearned for his mother's touch. And when he was in Mathura, Krishna would cry after the Vrajvasis. And when he was sleeping beside Rukmini, he would call out Radha's name. At those times, Krishna's suffering was so extreme that it frightened his associates. Yet at the same time, within himself, Krishna felt unprecedented bliss. Overpowering heartache, intense longing, and unrelenting hope were catalysts that transformed his suffering into ecstasy. And that ecstasy was so unique that Krishna wondered, what is this mysterious poison that transforms into the sweetest bliss? It had been like that just now, after he had snuggled into Yasoda's embrace. Krishna had become both the victim of neglect and the beneficiary of bliss. It was an extraordinary experience, one that he continued to enjoy until his rebellious mind thought, "She has left me for some milk." Following the experience of separation came thoughts of being neglected, and from those thoughts emerged corresponding feelings that stoked the anger of love. Burned thus by the fire of indignation, Krishna boiled like a baby volcano. Mother Yasoda was also a beneficiary of a similar but even more intense sweetness. Upon feeding Krishna, she had tasted the heavenly nectar of his touch, and when she put him down, she drank the abysmal poison of his absence. But as she rushed to save the boiling milk, her ecstasy amazingly increased step by step. Like Krishna, she too was intoxicated by the love of separation. However, because he was the object of love and she the subject, because he was unlimited and she limited, her pleasures, both nectarine and poisonous, were 100 times greater than his. So when divine love forced Yasoda to rush to the stove, she was so disorientated that in an invisible way, Yogamaya had to guide her. Knowing that his mother's bliss exceeded his own, Krishna felt further deprived. Another injustice. Pierced thus from multiple directions, his mounting anger finally erupted. Although a little boy of three, Krishna was the origin of anger, material and spiritual. The forms of Veerabhadra and Nrsimha may have appeared ferocious by comparison to baby Krishna, but the fierceness of the anger that he felt was no less than theirs. In this way, frustration at being neglected, jealousy of the boiling milk, and the injustice of being spiritually shortchanged cause a host of bodily symptoms. His hands clenched and unclenched. His chest heaved with rapid breathing, and his black complexion became tinged with red. Eyes reddish, eyebrows flitting, his lips trembling. Krishna glared in the direction of the kitchen, but his lower lip bit his lower lip and vowed, "I will get revenge." Feeling the heat of Krishna's wrath, the two parrots left their nearby perch for the security of the balcony and a company of other birds. Too ashamed to speak, the birds could only wonder at the cause of Krishna's sudden fury. One bird thought, he must be upset at being deprived of his mother's milk. Another thought, more upsetting than that, it must be his feelings of abandonment. And yet another, for such a young child, the pangs of unsatisfied hunger are most upsetting. Finally, one bird tweeted softly, his anger is most natural for a young child, and it arises spontaneously and without the cause. Although they could not agree that Krishna's anger was even real, the birds huddled together lest it were, and more so lest it be directed at them. But when a shower of hot, angry tears issued from Krishna's lotus eyes, most birds became convinced that Krishna's anger was heartfelt, although a few remained convinced that it was a show. Craning their necks as only they can, The birds followed Krishna's movements and spoke among each other in hushed tones that only they could hear. The way of birds is to bicker, at odds as to the cause of Krishna's anger and tears. They now argued in undertones. Were his tears real or false? Did they represent true emotions or subterfuge? In regards to knowledge of Krishna's pastimes, the parrots and the owl were most learned, and therefore birds like the wagtail were inclined to share their conclusions. Sukha said, Child Krishna's show of anger and tears are certainly deceitful, for in the shelter of a mother like Yasoda, he has no reason to exhibit them. The owl concurred. Indeed, his tears are simply meant to deceive his mother and to garner sympathy. But Sari, who had the heart of a mother, saw things differently. From your adult point of view, Krishna's tears may indeed appear false, but from his childish perspective, they are not. For him, they are real. The two senior males exchanged glances. Continued Sari. As mentioned earlier, under these circumstances, tears are natural for a child. The wagtail added, there is no doubt that sometimes, in order to get his way, Krishna cries false tears, but this time he is crying because he remains hungry. Who can blame a child for that? Sari continued her defense. Whatever you may think, Krishna's anger arises from his innermost mind, and the subsequent tears are as factual as the truths of the Puranas. Why would he have cause for false tears when there was no one here to see them? To check no one was present, the birds looked this way and that. It was true. There was no one other than Krishna and his rising anger. Indeed, the atmosphere seemed to crackle with tension in a way that air sparks during a thunderstorm. Sukha nodded in agreement. There is no public here to impress, and that lends weight to the logic that Krishna's tears are factual. Sari elaborated. It is natural that someone exaggerates their condition. For example, when a lady is tired, she may make excessive facial and bodily gestures to accentuate fatigue. Although those gestures are exaggerations, the underlying cause is real. Similarly, Krishna's tears may dramatize his condition, but that does not make them false. His anger and sorrow are real. The owl blinked to affirm the truth of what he had heard, and while Sari's conclusions seemed to quell all dispute, a young songbird from Mathura raised a question that vexed the others. Well, from scriptures we know that the Lord is always satisfied within himself, and that he knows neither hunger nor thirst. Dear friends, is it not contradictory to say that Krishna is hungry and angry? The local birds were disturbed by this intrusion, but Sukha pacified them with a nod. After all, it was their duty to bring Raj's visitors to a higher stage of understanding. Deferring to the wisest of them, Sukha nodded towards the owl. Towards the owl, who replied, Who do you think Krishna is? A bit uncertain, the songbird looked at Krishna and then at the birds. He is the Supreme Lord, having assumed the innocent form of a child. He is now pretending to be dissatisfied and angry in order to nourish the paternal love of Mother Yasoda. The owl rotated his head in an expression of displeasure. You have come from Mathura, and so your perspective of Krishna's pastimes is immature. Please listen. The other birds nodded in agreement, and with their eyes on Krishna, they cocked their feathery ears. Krishna is not acting. Dependence on his parents is a feature of his essential identity, his Sarupa Dharma, and from that dependence sprouts the inspiration by which he becomes the father of all living entities, and hence their maintainer, Janani. This child Krishna is the original feature of Godhead. He is not an expansion of Narayan. Rather, Narayan is his expansion. Therefore, whatever moods and gestures you see him express are spontaneous, not the show. Do you understand? The songbird understood. Elated by the association of Raja's birds, he began to swing sweetly. But Sukha commented for good measure. Mayavadi philosophers may argue that anger is a mundane emotion, and that the Lord should not exhibit any of the 18 human defects. However, his anger is transcendental and an expression of divine love. When this divine anger is reflected off the mirror of matter, it is known as mundane anger and is an expression of frustrated want. Knowers of truth thus conclude that Krishna's pastimes in Raj are not material but divine, not a performance but expressions of his identity. Sukha and the others fell silent and turned their attention on Krishna. And just in time, Krishna's anger had not faded. Eager to express itself in a way that would fulfill his desires and precipitate another pastime, it soared. Outraged Krishna looked around for something upon which to vent his fury. As his eyes fell on the churn, he reached out to grasp the churning rod. With a motive to do harm to his mother, but impelled by the ecstasy raging within, Krishna tried to raise the rod, but could not. It remained tied to the pillar. He tugged, but it held fast. He, by whose will alone devotees are freed from the free modes of nature, failed to sever free silken ropes. The pastime potency would not have it. His attempt faltered. Krishna's anger rose further. The churn could see what was coming, but it was not anxious about its fate. It existed for Krishna's pleasure, and being fully surrendered, it accepted that fate, knowing that it would remain always a servant of the Lord. On the previous day, Krishna collected some stones from the courtyard and brought them into the house. His lotus eyes now fell on the small pointed stone that was part of a broken pestle. Reaching down, he artfully held the stone like a dagger and then struck the bottom of the churn with the pointed edge once, twice. Meanwhile, Mother Yasoda had removed the pot of milk and was fussing over the stove to lower its heat. Krishna cast a guilty glance in her direction. Noting that she had not heard him, but remained preoccupied, he struck again, thrice. The pot cracked neatly in two with just the slightest sound. Pleased with his own antics, Krishna betrayed himself with a mischievous smile. "Oh, that servant girl," Yasoda muttered, and with her back towards him added, "Just a minute, darling, I shall be right there." But the son of Nanda was preoccupied. As the yogurt flowed steadily through the cracked churn and onto the floor, he tapped the pot with his forefinger, and the churn silently split into two halves in a way palace gates open to receive a king. The sound of the breaking churn resembled the Brahmana's chant of Swaha as they pour libations onto the sacrificial fire. The splattering of yogurt and butter resembled their subsequent prayer, "Idam Krishnaya idam namama," and the churning rod rubbing against the pillar was the tinkling sound of the bell Brahmanas ring during the food offering to the Lord. Hunger prodded Krishna forward. Just see this delicious feast. Heeding this advice, Krishna crawled through the churned butter, but by the time he reached the broken churn, its contents had spilled onto the floor. Not a drop of uncontaminated butter remained. Thwarted again, Krishna's hunger also transformed to anger. His Chakola-like eyes brimming with tears, Krishna clenched the two rows of his moon-like teeth, tinted red by the rays of his ruby lips. He had taken so much effort, risked so much, and was no better off than before. "One more moment, darling." But Krishna did not have another moment. Indignantly splashing the spilled yogurt here and there, determined to satisfy his hunger at all costs, Krishna resolved to raid the storeroom. Okay, he's going to raid the storeroom now. Everyone's still with us, hopefully.
Yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
In a small vestibule was a doorway opening into the storeroom adjoining the kitchen. It was here that Yasoda stored cooking supplies. There was wheat, rice, and spices in chest-high vessels, and milk products in clay pots hanging from the ceiling. The room was dark and cool, and kept locked from the praying eyes and eager tongues of Krishna and his friends. But Krishna knew where the key was hidden. His feet covered in buttery yogurt, the confirmed butter thief headed into the bedchamber, leaving telltale footprints wherever he went. When Krishna reached the almirah in a dressing saloon, he knew that he was entering enchanted waters. Never before had he been so daring. And though he was ruthless at the neighbors, he was always careful not to upset his mother at home. Good domestic conduct assured him of a royal protection from village complainants. But this was something new. I do not care. The birds craned their necks and watched as Krishna lifted the key from the drawer, and now in a fearful yet prayerful mood, romped through the rooms, smearing the walls and furniture with his yogurty hands. The thrill of mischief was intoxicating, and in such an inebriated state, Krishna lost sight of right and wrong. Noticing the watching birds, he threw them a glance that said, "If you want to be fed here in the future, be sure you do not see anything." Obedient, the birds turned their backs to the palace and looked out on the Gokula town. What an eventful morning. Shall we peek? Not unless you want to end up like the sons of Maharaj Sagara, with no witness about, and comforted by the sight of his mother's mopping up the spilt milk. Krishna stepped into the reception room, very quietly slipped the key into the storeroom door and turned it. The lock made a soft click and the door gave way. Krishna entered the storeroom and again closed the door behind him. It was pitch black, but not for long. Involving his divine effulgence, Krishna lit up the storeroom in a way that the Brahma Jyoti lights up the darkness beyond the coverings of the universe. Krishna looked at the many pots hanging from the ceiling. They were too high for him to reach. Scanning the storeroom, he saw a tall mortar in which his mother would grind spices. Then he, who was unable to reach the pots, now moved the heavy mortar in place, and stepping on a crate of vegetables, scaled the mortar to within reach of his goal. For a moment, Krishna stopped to hear what his mother was doing. "That silly servant girl," she muttered. "She is still preoccupied," he whispered. Removing a few pots with great effort, Krishna placed them at his feet, and then, crawling to the ground, he used the mortar as a picnic table over which he leaned casually. Finally, he had what he wanted, yesterday's freshly churned butter. We just got a couple of pages, or 1.5 pages, so we'll just finish this chapter as well. Okay. Curious to see if their contents were identical, Krishna ripped off their cloth covering and sampled the butter from each pot, all the while making pleasant sounds of satisfaction. Some pots had been earmarked for yogurt, some for ghee, and some for butter. They were all heavenly. He could discern no difference between them. His mother was an unparalleled master in the art of making butter. The taste of the butter was incredible, but the truth of the matter was that it was not what butter was normally like. It looked like butter and felt like butter, but it was not It was Mother Yasoda's love for him in the form of dairy. The sensation of dipping his hand into the butter was the same as being held in her embrace. The taste of the butter on his tongue was the same as the taste of her breast milk, and the effect on his eyes of seeing the butter was but the same as seeing her transcendental form. What is butter? No, it was more like Mother Yasoda. Was it butter? No, it was more like Mother Yasoda. And the combined impact of these sensations seemed to bring Yasoda into Krishna's presence. And so for a moment he panicked, thinking that she had entered the storeroom. Then, regaining his composure, Krishna continued to savor the butter, but as usual, he restrained himself from eating too much. If I overeat, then the effects of this butter will subdue me, make me submissive to mother, and bring this pastime to an end. That was the reason he always stole neighbor's produce and not his mother's dairy, and not his mother's. Yasoda's dairy was so saturated with her incomparable love that it would immediately bridle him and bring him under her control. Such an outcome would be incompatible with his pastimes. It would mean no more stealing and no more mischief. Since the neighbor's produce lacked the intensity of Yasoda's love, it lacked the same controlling power. He could therefore freely plunder their homes without fear of becoming a docile do-gooder and the laughing stock of his friends. But this morning, Krishna's anger insulated him, from the domestic effects of his mother's butter. Bodily hairs erect and limbs trembling in ecstasy, he was able to savor the special taste of her labors, and as he did so, he could not but help exclaim, But there was a problem. As he relished his special treat, it caused his anger to wane, and thus fear of his mother waxed. As his fear mounted, Krishna's appetite lessened, and like an ordinary child, his mind eventually became filled with doubt. What will happen when mother sees the mess I made? And what if my friends come just now and tattle on me? What if some neighbors use this as evidence of their complaints to date? Who knows what she would do? His fears fueled by such thoughts, tears again welled up in Krishna's eyes, flowed down his cheeks and flooded his lips. Sniffling, Krishna wiped away his tears, and so doing, smeared his face with butter. The evidence was now inedible. Who knows what shall I do? Who knows what she will do? With thoughts of punishment servicing in his mind, Krishna, like all naughty boys, sought escape. The nearest door led to the grand hall, where guards were stationed. They would immediately raise the alarm. This is not a good escape route. The only other way out was back through the parlor, between the kitchen and the bedchamber, and then down the back staircase to the courtyard, and that meant entering the line of vision. I can hide in the garden until mother becomes so fearful at my disappearance that her anger abates. Krishna cocked his ears. What was she doing? There seemed to be no noise from the kitchen. She had finished cleaning up. He panicked. He who is feared by fear personified blanched, and his dark blue complexion turned a pale sky color. Tears continued to roll down his cheeks, and his limbs shook. What shall I do? How will I escape? Seeing that her lord required assistance, the pastime potency exerted her mystic influence over Mother Yasoda and made her unable to detect what happened next. Reassured by his divine aid, Krishna carefully opened the door and then stopped. With an impish smile, he turned back into the storeroom and embraced the pot of butter. Holding the pot to his chest, Krishna then passed through the door and skillfully braved the open spaces leading to the back stairway. Afraid to look in the direction of his mother, Krishna followed his own buttery footsteps. shedding false tears as insurance against being caught. When he reached the broken churn, thrilled by the apparent victory of his caper, Krishna stomped around in the spilled produce for good measure. Then, feeling very satisfied with himself, he left through the back door and down the stairs into the courtyard. Hari Om. That's it. Hare Krishna. So thank you, devotees, for joining in or listening in. Hope you appreciated that. It's very nice, isn't it? All right, we'll stop there. Let's have, if there's any couple of reflections, quick reflections, something which you specifically remember, it's caught your attention.
It's nice that Krishna, who is feared by fear personified, was frightened of his mother.
Yeah, that's taken from a verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam first canto. Yeah. And I remember the part when Krishna he's becoming angry, more fearsome than the anger of Lord Nrsingadev. Gopal's anger. Anyway, Hare Krishna. All right. So thank you. Let's please join us and we continue next Monday. Is it Monday? Monday, this coming Monday. The chapter is Yasoda finds and catches Krishna. All right, so that'd be quite exciting. Okay, thank you everyone for listening in. Hare Krishna. May you dream of Krishna. Hare Bol. All right.
Hare Krishna, thank you.
Hare
Thank you.
Krishna.
Praise
And next week I try and cover two chapters and get the photos of the pages so we can share the reading out. Okay. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Thank you.